Thanks for joining us today. I'm Nancy Furness, and this is We've Got Issues. Today's interview is taking place at MLA Rick Glumac's office in Port Moody, and we are on the ancestral and stolen lands of the Coquitlam, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Musqueam, Stolo, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Kakite peoples. So today I'm being joined by Ernie Cardinal, and we're going to talk about land acknowledgements. So thank you so much for joining us today, Ernie. I always enjoy our conversations.
Oh, well, Ninashkaman, I am grateful to be here. It's always an honor. The last time we got together was for Truth and Reconciliation. And our dialogue we had then kind of touched on land acknowledgements. So it's nice to come back to actually address this very diverse topic, you know, because it has so many different sides to it.
It really does. And can you, maybe let's just start with, what does a land acknowledgement mean? Like, why are we doing land acknowledgements?
Well, you know, I can look at it this way, first of all, to really what it is. And it goes along with a political apology. So you have to find out, what is a political apology? Is it sincere? Right? Because I mean, I remember being in Surrey at the Clahowie Center the day Stephen Harper did his big apology to the residential schools, and the tears he flew out of his eyes, and you know, the elders and the survivors, we were in tears. It was a moment of, it was so emotional, something that will stay imprinted on my heart forever, right? Now, he stated his apology of the horrific trauma that Canada and the churches inflicted onto our people. You know, every Aboriginal person personally. Then almost a year to the day, when he was at the G5 summit, he stated and was quoted in world press, there was no colonialism in Canada. So that was literally like a slap right across the face.
That's totally back to square one.
Exactly. So, you know, when you look at political apologies, it really kind of puts into place where they're going down a checklist, right? But there is no real reconciliation in those words. So when we look at land acknowledgements, what is the meaning behind it? Is it just the checklist that the school districts do? They put the little plaques up on the hallways in the classrooms. They do the land acknowledgements, but is that it? Is there any education behind it? Now, I remember working at Betty Gilbert Middle School, a wonderful community. And once again, it felt like my second home. And they asked me to do a lot of the land acknowledgements. And after doing these land acknowledgements, I could see the blankness in the children's
Not understanding.
Just weren't understanding. So one time I stopped and then I said, does anyone know where Kwantlen is? And everyone, the whole gymnasium did not know. Does anyone know where Katzie is? Can somebody point to where the Katzie Reserve is? Nobody, right? The whole gym, even the teachers probably, right? You know, so it just showed how empty these words were, how hollow they were. So then I started pointing to every, direction to where every reserve in every nation was, just to show that these people are still alive, they're still relevant, they are still here, and they still are the land stewards of their area. So when we look at land acknowledgements, it could be a hollow gesture, which is just a political statement, or it could be something to acknowledge the people. But even then, Nancy, it could be a little difficult, because what happens is a lot of people look at these land acknowledgements as historical claims.
Right, and I think I have been doing land acknowledgements a little bit like you say, just following sort of the same line, and almost to the point where it's memorized And I say it, I'm sincere, but it doesn't always feel sincere. And when I was saying it, I was saying unceded. And you said, yeah, that's nice, but it's actually just a nice word for stolen. So to make these land acknowledgements really meaningful, how should they be worded? Like, should we be saying stolen lands? Or is there certain wording, certain thoughts that should go into making a land acknowledgement?
You know, the whole concept of what do we call ourselves? What do we, how do we address, the words elder, knowledge keeper, knowledge sharer? There's just so many levels of how to define oneself. And it's very important that we do define ourselves as, correctly as possible, but yet we can't get caught into that. We can't get mired down with the words.
Right.
We have to look at the content. Like as I was stating earlier, when we do land acknowledgements, it's a feeling of historical, like, this was the land of the Kakite people, right? It was, as in like there is no more Kakite people anymore, or the land and people are severed. But it's not true. We are still here. We are still living. We are still moving forward, right? So when we look at these land acknowledgements, we have to acknowledge that these people are still here. They are still laying claim to the land. They still have the responsibility. Now, here's the thing, Nancy, and this is what I love, and this is the reason why I still do land acknowledgements, because I got jaded. For a while, I was like, this is a political apology. I'll have nothing to do with these things.
It's not action.
Yes, exactly. And so many times it feels like that slap across the face when Stephen Harper said that thing. I didn't want to fall into that until I read Burnaby School District's land acknowledgement flyer. And in it, they made a very good statement. And that is, it is making a pledge that you are now going to be a land steward as well. You are going to follow the protocols and the traditions and the responsibilities that the original people of this land have taken.
So building an allyship.
Exactly, and that's what you are, Nancy. You have always showed that you are true allies. The work you do with the trees, the land, and having people like myself, right?
Well,
come and
honored.
speak. Well, no, it's a very true statement. So when you do a land acknowledgement, I can tell in my heart and by your actions that you are being a land steward. You are taking, not advantage, but you're taking the wording that you said and you're putting into place. So whenever I work with the youth, every day I always kind of challenge those youth. What are you saying? Who are these people? And what are you doing? Right?
So, Ernie, who should be writing and also saying the land acknowledgements? Should it be Indigenous and non-Indigenous? Should it be both of us working together? Yes. Or is it our responsibility as settlers to, create something based on our own research? We have so many questions. Who should be developing the land acknowledgements and who should be giving them?
Well, you have to look at land acknowledgements and welcome to the territories, which are two separate things, but are definitely put together. Now, what I like is how the community will embrace inviting a respected member of whatever nation you are doing the land acknowledgement on. They will invite them in, and when they invite them in, then that land acknowledgement becomes a welcoming to the territory. Myself, I'm in Nihiau. I am from northern Alberta. So I get asked to do a land acknowledgement all the time, and I always say I will do a land acknowledgement, but that is what it is. It's not going to be a welcome to the territory, because I do not have that responsibility here on the shared territories of the Ho'okame'ilum speaking people, right?
Right, so you're respecting the Ho'okame'ilum speaking people.
Exactly, it is their place and it's their responsibility and it's their honor to actually offer that. Now, I will say one little thing which I do feel very proud in my heart is that Chief Larrabee in New Westminster, the Kakite people, she has actually given me the right and the ability to do a welcoming to the territory on her behalf. Now, that is something that just blew my mind when she said that. Oh, yes, I actually love that chief with my total heart.
She has a very interesting story.
Exactly, yeah. So whenever I'm in New Westminster and Chief Larrabee or Stacy are not able to actually make the event, they have said that I can do that on their behalf, and it's just an honor. But that doesn't mean I can now go over to Kwantlen and do a welcoming. I do not have that ability. I have been to their longhouses, I have sang in their ceremonies, but yet I am just a welcomed and hopefully loved guest on their territory, right? So we have to really remember that.
And I think there's a great amount of respect amongst the different regions and territories or lands that you respect and acknowledge each other.
Yes.
Where I think sometimes we've lost that.
Yes, and we also have to really remember to be mindful of the people that are here right now, that lay ancestral claims. For instance, there is a book of the Upper and Lower Stolo people written by Wilson Duff. He's an amazing archaeologist that have worked here back in the 40s and 50s. He's kind of like the father of this area, like the way he was able to chronicle the elders that were themselves in their 50s to 80s. So we're getting a snapshot of what it was like to be here in Port Moody back in like 1890. Right. Okay, so imagine that. That was a totally different era, like generations. And he was able to get a snapshot of what it was like back then. And back then, this territory probably had like a totally different fishing village here, right? But they have been taken away, moved, or one of the other nations might have taken over. So things do change. Right, and we have to understand that the indigenous territories do have a history of kind of changing.
And there's a lot of shared territories too, and seasonal movement and harvesting, and I think. And you talked about Chief Larrabee and the Kakite nations.
Oh, yes.
And I think they totally lost their land base.
Absolutely. It's one of the only, I think there's 5 bands that do not have a land base, right? So for me, my heart always goes out to the Kakite people because they need to get at least a little foothold back. Once again, land acknowledgements. That's where they come really important, because when we say, this is the unceded territory, well, that really is stolen land.
Yes.
Because that's a perfect example. The Kakite people are being told, no, we can't give you any of your land back. We can give you some money, and then you could purchase some land. But is that the same thing, Nancy?
It's not the same. No,
yeah.
No, it's not. It's very poor compensation, I think.
Exactly.
So I think if we say a land acknowledgement, to me, we talk about truth and reconciliation, and a land acknowledgement. Maybe I'm off base on this, but I think a land acknowledgement to me isn't really meaningful reconciliation. It's more part of the truth part. We're speaking the truth. We're acknowledging that we're on lands that have been stolen. So that's more the truth part, which we have to have before we can do reconciliation, I think. How do we move on from land acknowledgements and the truth part into the reconciliation part?
Well, before we hop to that very important last part of the comment question, let's go right back to what you were talking about, truth and reconciliation. Now, myself, the whole truth and reconciliation calls to actions are everyone. There are a few in there which are so important, and we talked about that. Jordan's principle. We talked about education, right? What got us into this whole issue is going to be what is going to save us and get us out. And that, of course, is education. So land acknowledgements play a big role in education. And that's why I do believe in them. That's why I do like to start off ceremonies and gatherings with land acknowledgements. One thing I will omit, though, is when we do talk about truth and reconciliation and land acknowledgements, there is that disconnect, because what is happening is out of all those calls to action, there is not one recommendation for land back, right? And that is something people really, really, really don't want to touch, because it scares the Canadian person, because when they hear land back, they think that, you know, we're going to put our war paint on and we're going to, you know, grab our AK-47s and storm, you know, the Parliament building or something, right? But that's not what it's about. Right? It's not about us getting back all of, you know, Turtle Island, because quite honestly, the colonizers and settlers destroyed a lot of it, and we don't want it. But
totally
you know, of course, that's a joke.
Yes.
You know, but what I am trying to get at is we understand that the settlers are now here, generations are here. So, like our medicine wheel, we are all together. So we have to acknowledge that this is now going to be shared territory with the non-Indigenous and the Indigenous settlers. We have to work together to move forward. Now the thing is when we talk about land acknowledgements, we have to look at the land back. We really do have to acknowledge that that connection needs to be you know, acknowledged, and it needs to be given. So whenever we hear the word land back, you know, that scares us. Whenever we hear the word stolen, that scares us. Whenever we hear these words, it makes the whole process of truth and reconciliation kind of stutter and stop. So we, once again, look at the way we word things to kind of soften the blows, to make people want to move forward. Yeah. But sooner or later, maybe not our generation, maybe not even the next generation, but there's going to be a time when we can actually look at the real picture and not have to put the velvet glove, not have to candy coat it, not have to put the rose picture on it. Look at Germany right now. When you go into any German town, they will have plaques where they actually show where the Holocaust happened. They don't have to hide it anymore.
They're acknowledging it.
Yes, we are so far behind. You know, so we have to look at where other genocides are happening. Once again, perfect example, wording. We call our genocide cultural genocide. No, we're still finding mass graves. This is a genocide. So once we are able to deal with our honest, hard truths, then maybe then the land acknowledgements will start to mean something.
Ernie, I want to thank you so much.
Yes.
You always inspire us, and thank you for sharing and teaching us. And it's an honor, and it's wonderful to talk to you. And
Thank
I hope
you.
we can talk again soon.
I do. Please do. This is absolutely wonderful. And I do hope that, you know, with allies like yourself and these hilariously funny and handsome looking guys, we'll actually keep working forward, right? Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Ernie, and Nanashkum.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is We've Got Issues, and we've been speaking to Ernie Cardinal about reconciliation and land acknowledgements.